Well, hello there, beautiful. It's Kylie Patchett here, and welcome to the Wild and Finally Fecking Free podcast. I deeply believe that the years during and beyond perimenopause are a rite of passage. All of a sudden, we find ourselves on the precipice of a life transition where our brain literally rewires and runs out of fucks to give. We find ourselves shifting identity, no longer caring what other people think, and being invited to expand into new ways of being. Here, we share the real and raw stories from women who've been through deep midlife metamorphosis, taken a leap of faith, or broken the ties that bind us in patterns of staying small, stuck, and like our needs just don't matter. This is the midlife medicine you didn't even know you needed. Stories full of joy, despair, freedom, courage, and deep self-honoring. I am so glad you found us. Welcome. Well, hello there, beautiful. Welcome to the very first episode of the Wild and Finally Fucking Free podcast. I am Kylie Patchett, and this is episode 1, where I'm going to be introducing myself, why I'm so obsessed with creating midlife magic, and why the hell I started a podcast to share stories about other women's journeys. And a little funny story about how the Wild and Finally Fucking Free name dropped into my head. So I'm Kylie. I am, my first iteration of career was as a forensic biologist. So I worked in science for a lot of years, and then I moved into more leadership positions, coaching positions in the health and science industries, and then more recently in the disability and community services industries. So I've always been really, really obsessed with what makes people tick, how our brains work, how our environments impact our behavior, how our childhood and our DNA. So my degree is in genetics. So DNA was always a fascinating thing for me. But, you can have two people with the same DNA put in two different environments, which create very different behaviors, thoughts, habits, etc. So in my professional career, I've always been leading teams, pulling out the best in people, figuring out how people tick and where that they need to be thriving. I'm really, really deeply passionate about growth and finding the edge of expansion and challenging the status quo and getting to the stage where we really, really understand at our fundamental being that we are in charge of our lives, that we have a responsibility to have awareness around how we act in the world, how we interact with people, how we create our relationships. And the beautiful thing about that is when you really, really settle into the power that we have to be the creator and the decider of our reality, magical things happen. Excuse me, because we all of a sudden realize that if we've created something and it's not feeling right anymore, that we can uncreate it. And that's where the gold begins. So a few years ago, back in 2011, my husband and I had been taking care of my dad, who was 55 when I was born. And he'd had some heart issues. He lived with us for 6 years, and he passed away in March of 2011. And that started me on what I now see as quite a knee-jerk journey of life is short. I need to do all the things right now, and realizations about how some places in my life had gotten off track. So I took a little bit of a sabbatical. I rang a lady in New York City who was a women's pleasure coach. And I said to her, "Hey, Jenna, my name's Kylie. I'm from Australia. I just realized you're Australian," because I'd listened to an interview that she did, and I finally realized she had an Australian accent like me. And I said, "I would really love to learn to do what you do." And knocked me down with a feather. She said, "Oh, well, come on over and intern." And so I went outside to my husband and I said, "So how do you feel about me moving to the States for 3 months?" And his answer was, "Oh, I feel great about it as long as we come to." So in the space of a couple of months, we'd sold all of our belongings apart from our big furniture. We'd packed up, we'd moved. I went to New York for a month to intern. My family stayed with my beautiful husband's family in Portland, Oregon, and my kids, and I'm air quoting, hung out and homeschooled on the ski slopes of Mount Hood. And it was quite a magical adventure. We had been quite anchored through the period of looking after my dad, and that was a privilege and an absolute honor to walk alongside him through those last few years. And it was also hard. And when I was in New York City, I had these moments of, what do I want my life to look like? And I wrote a book called Stand Tall and Stake a Claim on Your Delicious Life. There's, I think, about 18 copies left in my garage still all these years later. And I actually typed that book out in Central Park in New York City on an iPad, on the very first iteration of iPad. I think it was actually an iPad 1. So painstaking at the least, but there was this inkling inside of me that all of a sudden I was by myself. I didn't have responsibilities of being a mum. My kids were 6 and 7. I didn't have my dad. I didn't have a husband with me. I was literally had this absolutely stunningly beautiful moment in time where I got to just decide what I wanted to do, what I wanted to eat, where I wanted to go. And I remember really clearly ending up one day on the top of a red bus in New York City with the open tops. And I'd gone to a yoga class early in the morning, and I just had this amazing day where I just let my feet guide me, like left or right, where do I want to go? And I had this amazing day. I went to a yoga class with a friend I'd connected to, and then I went to lunch, and then I decided to go to Broadway. And this was after the Broadway show. And it started raining when I was on the top of this red bus. And I thought, oh my goodness. And I had my yoga mat. Those of you listening to the audio, you can't see me, but I'm being very descriptive in my hands. But I had this yoga mat over my head, and the rain was drizzling down. But I had this feeling of deep joy and freedom and power about the choice that I had the privilege to be making at that stage of my life. So fast forward a few years, I went and I did do my internship as a women's pleasure coach, and I later studied holistic health coaching and neuro-linguistic programming and EFT, for internal family systems, meditation, yoga, lots of different modalities. And I opened up my business, and I had that business for about 7 years. I absolutely was obsessed, and still am, with helping women to understand what they really want and how to create moves from their heart space to actually get it, to give themselves permission to desire what they want to desire, and to step into the power and the freedom and the joy and the groundedness that comes from self-mastery of all of the crappy shit in our brain that tells us we can't have what we want, but also that self-responsibility of, you get to decide. You are the decider. You're the creator. Let's freaking do this. Like, quit your bitching and let's step up into power. So I had a women's well-being program called Destination Delicious, and I'm really, really honored to say that that was such a beautiful, warm, connected community of women that they're still friends. They still meet each other. I still see them on social media hanging out, and I just think, oh, that's such a beautiful community. And then I got off track. And I know this is going to be a long story, but I think it's really important to understand that we can capture these beautiful heart spaces in ourselves, and we can step into these new realities. That doesn't mean that we're magically healed from any of the stories. And one of my stories back then was I had to work hard to make money. I come from a dairy farmer's daughter and a man who grew up in the Depression. He was born in 1920. So you can imagine the generational wealth stories that I've inherited, and still healing. And back in those days, I created a business that felt really, really hard. So I had beautiful connection, and Destination Delicious was absolutely the best thing I've ever created to this date. But I also worked with business coaches, and I allowed myself to be told that they knew better than me. Or no, not that they even told me that. I believed that someone else knew better than me about what my life should look and feel like, and what my business should look and feel like. So I started doing business coaching. Now, it's part of what I do in a corporate arena. I have, a lot of experience with storytelling and marketing and communication, executive leadership coaching, and lots of more corporate business skills, but it wasn't where my heart lied. And that is the key takeaway here. When your heart is telling you you're off track, you need to bloody well listen. Otherwise, you end up causing yourself a whole shitload of pain. Anyway, long story short, I decided after one of my close family members had an accident, and our personal life had quite a dramatic turn. Our life changed a lot. There was a lot of pain and a lot of emotional and physical pain around the accident. And I found that my bandwidth for coaching really wasn't there anymore. I was too busy trying to take care of my family than to be able to hold space for other people. However, I now can see in hindsight that looking back, I created another job. I created something that I was working hard for, and I wasn't staying in the zone of joy and freedom and radiance and love and magnetism. And so, the accident gave me a great excuse to close my business. I have since spent 5 years back in corporate, trying to fit myself into a box where you must appear polished. And if you don't know what I look like, I have crazy curly hair that never behaves itself, so I never feel polished. And you must automatically respect authority, even if you think they're a bunch of absolute dickheads that make stupid decisions. And you must toe the party line, and you must not swear, and you must. And I had 5 jobs in 5 years. I find it really hard to get jobs. I can do lots of different things. But as my yoga teacher back in the day, at about probably 2008, when I first started doing yoga regularly, once said to me, just because you can does not mean you should. And that is a continuing theme in my life. As women, we're really good at getting shit done. But I want you to always ask at what cost. And at that stage, the corporate game for me cost me my peace of mind. It cost me my health. It cost me my comfort in my body, my self-expression through my clothes, lots of different things. I found myself biting my tongue all the time, because I am a person that does not believe that anyone should say they have more power than someone else or act like they have more power than someone else just because they're in a particular position. I believe that all of us, need to be included and respected and valued, and that just wasn't my experience in the corporate world. So January this year, I found myself sitting on my meditation cushion going, what the fuck am I going to do with my life? I am unhappy. I am burnt out and bitchy. I'm snapping at my kids, snapping at my husband. I don't like myself in this environment. And so I decided, as I would have said to my coaching clients years ago, to turn inwards and ask my heart, what do you want? What are you craving? How can I honor myself right now? Just show me some way that I can feel better, physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And the answer that I kept getting was, go back to coaching. Your business is waiting for you. Go back to coaching. And my answer was, oh, no, fuck no. No, I'll do anything you want me to, just not that. And, if you've ever asked that question, the universe has given you a clear answer, but not the answer that you want. I know that you know the energy of that. So anyway, the nudge became louder and louder. And back in February this year, which is 2022, I finally thought, okay, I surrender. I'm still working full time. I'm just going to put it out there on Facebook and say, thinking about returning to coaching, I'd really love the opportunity to talk to any of you that have worked with me previously about how our work together or how our journey together impacted your life, and whether it is something that taught you anything, because I'd lost my faith in myself as a coach. And I'll be very honest, I said to my husband, I can't do that anymore. I'm not that inspirational, positive, solution-seeking, joyful person. And he's like, yeah, you are. It's just that all this other shit is like clouding your vision and you can't see yourself for what everyone else sees. Take a moment to honor my beautiful man, because he has always, always had faith in me, even when I haven't had it in myself. So I had the most divine, delicious conversations with ex-clients, and I had more and more delicious, divine conversations with friends that were still in the coaching industry that I'd chosen to disconnect from because I had a deep, deep story of failing the first time in my business. Hey gorgeous, we interrupt this gold for a delicious invitation. If your whole body has been whispering more lately, more voice, more truth, more satisfaction, more clients of the soulmate variety, more cash, more you, then this invitation is for you. Potent, my sister mind is officially open. This is my high touch, holy fuck, I'm ready sister mind for rebels in good girl clothing who are done outsourcing their power and diluting their magic to fit into someone else's business formula. If you have been craving a space where your strategy, your voice, and your energy all get to be offered, honored, refined, and amplified, this is it. Inside of Potent, you'll get my eyes on your business every single week, copy mentoring, and that is for brand copy and content storytelling that turns your truth into client catnip, energetic recalibration that helps you unhook old learned limitation patterns, keeping you quiet, not being seen, not being heard, real-time, high-touch, one-on-one coaching that actually sees the bigness of your vision, and the kind of sisterhood that does not flinch when you show up in your full, messy, brilliant, phoenix rising from the ashes glory. This isn't surface level support. It's deep, potent, paradigm shifting work that changes who you are as a woman in business and a woman in life. We start in August. Early open access is open right now. For the month of June 2025, inside of this early access open doors period, you will receive juicy bonuses, extended payment plans, and access immediately to my entire library of storytelling gold. You'll find all the juicy details at kyliepatchett.com/potent. And we fill spaces, and there's only 10 of them, and more than likely only 5 by the time you listen to this, because by that time I will have offered them to the existing cohort, the beautiful original OG circle. We do actually take applications on a first come, first served basis. So come and apply, and let's get back to the magic of the episode. And that is just not the case. I succeeded, and I succeeded in doing some beautiful things. And I also succeeded in finding ways that I didn't thrive. And that is the self-compassion learning piece that I would always invite you to step into when you're at that precipice of like, well, I've fucked that up. Now, instead of making it mean we're a bad person, we made a bad move, we've stuffed things up. What's the learning? So since having those conversations with clients, I have just been following the breadcrumbs. I've been following the breadcrumbs. I got a hit of inspiration about something that one of my key guiding words that I've always wanted for myself is the feeling of radiance. And to me, that is the feeling of glowing from within, because you're on purpose, you know who you are, you've set your boundaries, you're very clear on what you are and are not available for. Your life nourishes you, mind, body, and soul. You're doing work that lights you up. You're connected to your family. You've got joy and pleasure and playful pursuits that, get your juices flowing. and you just feel good in your skin. And that, to me, that feeling of radiance it's not about your physical appearance. It's that glow of energy. And I always sort of liken it to seeing one of those ladies in the street that's, 70 or 80, and she's got all those laugh lines, and you have these conversations with women of that age, and I just want to sit at their feet and bask in their wisdom, because they've loved and they've lost and they've triumphed and they've been challenged and they've done all sorts of things, and the learnings glow from the inside of them because they know who they are. They're unapologetic. They know what they're available for. They know what they need, and they have no concerns or layers of like, I need to, keep you happy. I need your approval. And that's what I want to be when I grow up. That's where the idea of radiance comes from. So earlier this year, I launched the Radiance Revolution, which is something that I describe as a self-healing haven for midlife mavens. We go through a whole journey, which is a 3-part cycle or spiral, which is to anchor into your heart, to alchemize all the fear and shit that comes up when we say that we actually want something, and then to embody being the woman who actually creates a life that does nourish her mind, body, and soul. So it's very blessed to have a small but beautiful connected cohort through the first time. We've just wrapped that up about a month ago. And since then, on a personal level, my corporate career has gotten more and more uncomfortable. I've gotten more and more aware that I'm saying no to my own desires. And yet I would tell you and your friends and my kids, everybody else in the world, I would say, go after it, listen to your heart. And yet I wasn't allowing myself to do that. And that lack of alignment was getting more and more and more painful for me. And that is the key. If you're feeling uncomfortable in your life, you're being called to pay attention to something that's out of alignment. And when we ignore it, unfortunately, the nudges will get louder and louder. So something else that's been happening for me parallel to all this is that I'm 47 and a half, and I've been beginning to feel some of the early stages of the perimenopause changes. So I've been feeling a little bit hot under the collar, most notably for me, because I was in an environment that I wasn't thriving. I was getting home and I was either crying or full of rage. And I mean rage like I want to rip your face off. And my poor husband and my daughters, as always, the ones that are closest to us are the ones that are most at risk of being exposed to our worst behavior. And I, again, just thought I need to make some changes in my life. I'm being called to pay attention. Parallel to that, I actually have one of my daughters that has an ADHD diagnosis. And when I was talking to her specialist, I started to have these kind of like aha moments about, hang on a minute, my brain does that too. And that's, and I do that too. And I do that too. And I do that too. Anyway, fast forward a few months. I have just been diagnosed with not only ADHD, but female autism. And that is something that I'm a bit discombobulated, I have to say, about the whole thing, because from my limited understanding, some of my ADHD traits are kind of evened out by some of the autistic traits. And so it's much harder to spot in people that have both. But one of the things that has really, really done for me is given me a framework to understand myself in a way that I'm not blaming myself for not being able to do things. So one of the big things that I've always blamed myself for in my life is quitting too soon. Even when I blew up my business, I was like, I should have just stuck it out. I should have just, whatever. And one of the things I now know is with a brain with, ADHD, you're always seeking novelty and excitement, and starting something new is something that's really, really exciting, and finishing things is not so exciting. And I also realize now with the ADHD diagnosis that a lot of my discomfort in the corporate environment was because my brain was needing to manage lots of different stimulation, particularly in my last role, which was an open plan office with a fairly big team. And there was lots of demands on my brain's capacity to cope. And it was getting worse and worse. And one of the things I now know with a little bit of research I've been able to do is that perimenopause often exacerbates the ADHD symptoms. It is definitely my intention to invite, I've got a neuroscientist on my invite list and also an ADHD expert. So if you're kind of in that gray area where you're like, oh, there's a lot of females being diagnosed at the moment, I wonder if that's something that is true for me. I will be speaking with some experts down the track. But anyway, for my point of view, it just allowed me to put down some of the stories that I had about my way of being in the world, and also to surrender to the fact that this is the way I'm designed. Like, my ADHD brain is bloody cool in the fact that I have unlimited ideas and I can create from nothing, and I can pull ideas together and understand how to put them in a natural framework so that I can teach someone something or explain something that's complicated in lay people's terms, like a science thing or a process thing. And I love that about my brain. And I also love that I now have the ability to understand some of the things that I don't so much love about my brain. And then the other big thing that happened, again, parallel to all of this, and I'm sure we are getting to the end of this, is that I had a human design reading. Now, I am very late to the party with human design. I have just done an interview with Sarah Wilder, which will be coming up. I think it's episode 6 that we published, so not too far in the future. And I had a reading with Sarah. I only just came across human design earlier this year when I was doing a communication/marketing program. And I had a reading with Sarah, and I honestly had one of those out-of-body experiences where I felt like I was getting a chiropractic adjustment for my soul. And by that, I mean, there was so many things that she said that, again, similar to the ADHD diagnosis, gave me the peace of mind and honoring of myself, the way that I am and the strengths that I have, and maybe some of the, I'm not even going to say weaknesses, but the growth edges and the expansion points for me. And something I learned, and I don't know much about human design, so I'm going to go very, very, very basic and not dive deep into this, but something I learned is not only am I a generator, but I'm also a 3-5, which is a profile. And a 3-5 is literally designed to snack at the smorgasbord of life and see what tastes good. So trial and error, trial and error, trial and error. So I'm actually literally designed to try something on for size. And then if I don't like it, to just quickly put it down. And that's something that I've made myself wrong for. And then the 5 is about, I've forgotten what the 5 is about. It's the heretic, like the questioner, the leader of sort of change type of thing. But together, the 3-5 is a great life experimenter. Now, all of a sudden, knowing that, and I know that we shouldn't need this external framework, but for me, that has been an amazing, pivotal piece of the puzzle, to understand that my design is literally to experiment with life. So part of my experiment was to answer the clear calling of my heart to let go of corporate. So I'm now very proud to say I'm in the second week of, I'd like to say, non-employment, because let's face it, I suck at being an employee. I'm a born entrepreneur. I love having time and location freedom, and one of my highest values is freedom, and being in corporate is the opposite of that. So to tie all of those things together, I've now relaunched my coaching business, which is pretty obvious. But the podcast for me, one of the things that I am really stepping into is designing my life and my business through a sense of joy. So I've always talked about a feeling like your soul is wagging its tail. Like you get that. I get a full body tingling, and I also get this thing on the right side of my head where I get like a real physical sensation when I'm on the right track, or when I'm having a conversation. And it has happened so many times in these interviews where I'm hearing something that's pivotal that I need to pay attention to, that's like a next step or a universal wink or a breadcrumb towards something that I need to know. And I've just been running this beautiful experiment since I gave up my job of just going, what actually feels like it would be full of joy? And the answer very clearly, and this was way back when I had my reading with Sarah, which was now, geez, probably, I think that was back in, I think it's the 1st of September actually, and today is the 21st of October. So way back then I was saying to her, I really want to leave my job and I'm going to plan when to leave and whatever. And one of the things that Sarah said to me is, you're a sacral authority. You're an instinctual beast. Your body will tell you when you're meant to leave. And I'm like, oh, it can't be that simple. No, I need to plan. Anyway, there was a time that came in my office environment where I was just like, I can't fucking do this anymore. And I came home and I said to my beautiful man, what do you feel about me just stepping away? And he said, finally. You've been wanting to do this for years. So here I am. So the joy part of my journey is that I get really lit up when I hear a story of someone who has overcome an obstacle, broken a tie, taken a leap of faith, practiced self-trust, connected to her heart, and actually stepped into what she really wants to do. Now, the name Wild and Finally Fucking Free came to me on the beach, Northern Beaches. I was in Sydney visiting my friend, the beautiful Angela Raspis, who's one of our guests, I think episode 5. And Ange and I have always had beautiful, deep conversations. And I said to her, I'm just going to go, and she knows me well. I need a lot of time out to process and think. And I was very, very stressed in my work environment. And one of the things that Sarah had said to me was, what do you feel like what's your joy telling you to create? And I'm like, I want to have a podcast. I want this podcast to speak and share stories because it's medicine to women's souls. And we used to live in communities where, the daughters, the mothers, the grandmothers, the great-grandmothers were all connected. So we learnt from each other's stories, and we don't have that environment anymore. And so I really want this show to be about medicine. And I mean medicine, not in the clinical sense, but this soul medicine, this depth of wisdom that we get from sharing stories together. So the name Wild and Finally Fucking Free, again, Sarah said to me, what do you think it'll be called? And I'm like, I actually don't know. I don't know yet. It'll come to me. Walking along the beach in the Northern Beaches, and I just had this beautiful morning where I'd been watching. There's a couple of ladies there. I wonder if they'll ever get to hear this, whether they'll ever stumble across this podcast. And they're two people that they take golden retrievers out for the Golden Retrievers Club in Sydney, and there's a strip of beach, which is the dog beach. And so I had literally just spent probably an hour and a half walking up this little strip of beach and just observing and playing with all these golden retrievers. And, you think about a golden retriever, it's literally a being full of joy. Like, they're wagging their tail, they're smiling, everything is exciting. And this one little man, Felix, I'm such a dog person, and this one Felix, his name was, he came and I don't know whether he knew I needed some loving, but he came and he sat at my feet, and he had this bright yellow ball in his mouth, and he just sat and he looked up at me. And if you look back at my Instagram, you'll actually see a video of him. And he just looked up at me, and I was like, I think I've just been adopted. So I'd just been marinating in this total joy, playful. The sun was out. I was by myself, which I really, really love. I had space in my heart and in my life because as a corporate person, I was commuting, get up, have breakfast, get dressed, get in the car, do your 10-hour day, freak yourself out, fry your brain, get burnt out and bitchy, turn around, drive home, have a shower, go to bed, and do it all over again. Anyway, been on this beach, went for a walk. I was listening to Sarah's reading, which I've listened to about 262 times since I've had my reading. And I just got this feeling of like, what do I actually want in my life? How do I want to feel? And I wrote in this book, I've actually got it with me. This is a journal that my beautiful friend Andrew Aspis gave me that says, go where you feel most alive. And in it, I've written, how do I want to feel? I want to feel wild and finally fucking free. once I had that drop into my head, I was like, that is the podcast name. Because to me, breaking free of stories that keep us stuck small, like our needs don't matter, like we can't have what we want, like we're not worthy, we're not good enough, we're not loved, we don't belong, all the bullshit mental shit that we're conditioned with as a kid in different, versions for all of us. That is the opposite of wild and free, right? To me, wild is being completely sovereign, having agency over everything in your life. You get to choose, you get to set boundaries, you get to teach people the way to treat you. You get to choose what environments you're in. Some of us don't believe that, and that's okay. That's a different way of looking at the world, but it is my deep belief that our wildness comes from taking back our power and making decisions from our heart. And freedom is such a strong word for me. If you ask me my values, freedom will always be top of the list. The second part of the story comes from, I don't know, no, you probably can't see, but over there on my altar, I have a picture of a woman on a motorbike. And I saw this picture on Instagram. Shane and I used to have a bike when we were 21, before we got married and had kids. And it was a race bike. And, I was a lot littler then. I used to cling on to the back. And that feeling of freedom on the back of a motorbike is something that I've always loved. And yet we sold the bike and we did the responsible thing and we, did the family and had the blah, blah, blah. And anyway, about a year ago, we decided that, you know what? Our kids are growing and very, very soon we're going to be at the stage in our lives where we've got an empty nest. And we really wanted to honor the time to come back as a couple. And one of the things that Shane had, been hinting at was, it'd be cool to get a bike. Anyway, we got a cruiser. It's like being on a lounge. It's definitely not a race bike. But the cruiser has been this gateway for us to reconnect with each other, to go on adventures, to see new things, to have a lot of coffee. We do a lot of coffee, a lot of beautiful breakfast. We live in the country in Queensland, Australia, so about 45 minutes from the nearest centre and about 2.5 hours from Brisbane, which is the capital city of Queensland state. So we have a lot of beautiful country roads and we have a lot of beautiful long stretches and big bends. And when I got on the bike for the first time, I was reminded of how I felt as a 21-year-old on the back of that bike, where that sense of freedom and joy and deep contentment and the ability to go anywhere we wanted and to have this beautiful adventure together was something that was so deeply ingrained in me that as soon as I got back on the bike, it just powered back up. Anyway, I found this picture on Instagram. It's a woman in a leather jacket. She's got her hair streaming out behind her. And I was like, holy fuck, I want that. I want to feel like that. I want to learn to ride. I want to get my own bike. And I also want that leather jacket. And the leather jacket, I actually figured out it's called Black Arrow. And the leather jacket style is called Wild and Free. So for me, wild and free has so many connotations. It's about, freedom and rewilding ourselves from the institutions and the learnings and the conditioning. Freedom as this deep sense of possibility and not being anchored to anything that we don't want to be. I'm really, really, really fucking proud to birth this beautiful podcast with the name that now hopefully makes sense to you. To me, like I said before, the stories of other women are so powerful and so potent and have so much magic in them. I've done about 15 interviews so far. Tomorrow is launch day, so Saturday the 22nd of October, 2022. And every single one of the women that I've spoken to, who are all very different types of lives, where they live, what their experiences have been, but every single one of these stories, I have been to the point of near tears and then deep laughter, and that feeling like, my soul is receiving this download of soul medicine that's so needed. So I'm really, really, really deeply, deeply honored to be hosting these stories. If you know another woman in midlife who needs to be reminded that she's powerful, that she has agency, that she can heal anything, and I'll share a bit more about my personal story in other episodes, but I am your proof that no matter what trauma you've gone through, and no matter what how severe the degradation of your self-worth and your sense of belonging may have been in the past, that you can heal and you can choose a different story. And if you know someone who needs to be reminded of that, or if you need to be reminded of that, I'm so, so grateful to have you here. I want you to imagine, getting emotional. I want you to imagine that we are all sitting in circle, in community, learning from each other and lifting each other up, loving on each other and reminding each other how important each of us are. I did not expect to be emotional, but this matters so much to me. You and every woman in the world understands that she matters, and her needs matter, and her values matter, and her desires matter, and that when we play stories of small and stuck and like we don't matter, we are literally leaving holes in the fabric of humankind and what we're meant to be delivering to the world. Because no matter who you are, you were born with purpose and gifts and desires that are part of what you're meant to be delivering. And when we get stuck in our own heads, or we screw around with playing with the idea that we can't have what we want, we're ripping everyone off. And my other deep thing that I will say is that when we heal, when we take responsibility and we have awareness and we take up the reins of our lives, when we heal, we are helping the world to heal. We are breaking generational trauma, generational shit that we don't need in our lives anymore, in our world anymore. We're inviting our daughters to stand up. We're inviting our sisters to stand up, our friends, our mothers, and the generations to come. So I'm really, 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 really honored that you've come, and please, please do take the time to share this with someone. This is never going to be a platform where I'm banging on about the offerings that I have in the world, because if you like my vibe and you need assistance or help with healing or stepping into your power, you'll find me. I don't need to be banging on about things. So it's not going to be something where you come here and there's a program to be sold. It's come here, sit at the feet of other women, learn from their wisdom, and just love on yourself. So that was supposed to be 15 minutes and it was a lot longer than that. Thank you for listening. I really, really appreciate your time and attention. I know there's a lot of things that demand of us in our current world. Thank you for choosing me to have in your ears. And I am so freaking excited to birth this baby and to share these stories because, so much gold, so much healing, so much gold, so much love, so much invitation. So thank you from me to you. I'm Kylie Patchett, your host, and I'm really, really glad that you found us. Well, there you have it, beautiful one. Another inspirational episode. And thank you so much to our guest from today for sharing their journey and leap of faith. So many takeaways, as always. I would love to know what your favorite thing that we discussed or that hit you between the eyeballs to invite you into your own expansion or leap of faith was. Share it on Instagram or Facebook. You'll find me at Kylie Patchett. And I would love it and be so honored if you take the time to leave a review on any of your favorite podcast platforms about this show or the podcast in general. And finally, if you have someone in your life who is another midlife maven who may just need some reminding that she is a powerful, magnetic, amazing woman and that she absolutely deserves the life that she craves, please share us. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.